One of the biggest changes in Remix v2 is the routing convention. We went from this nested folder routing structure to more of a flat routing structure. If you don't want to convert all at once, you can use this v1 route convention util that we have, and you just plug it into your Remix config, and everything should work. In fact, the Remix website actually uses this util, and we do actually have a few routes that are defined with the flat route structure, but many of them are still using the folders. So the first thing that I want to do is actually want to check my package.json for this package, and we can see that we're on an old release, a pre-release, so I want to update that first. So what I can do is run npm install at remix run / v1 route conventions at latest. But before I do this, I want to make sure I'm not going to break anything. There's actually this really nice utility. If you run npx remix routes, it will run through all your routes and spit out the configuration for your routes. You can also make it a JSON if you like that format a little bit better. So what we can do here is we can just write that to a file, and that will save what it looked like before we do the upgrade. And now if I do the upgrade on the left-hand side, now on the right, I can run the same thing. And this time I'm going to go to new.json. So we can compare the two files, original.json and new.json. And if nothing shows up, that means it was good. I can show that if we actually change new.json to say something like rudy2 instead, and we run that diff, we will see that there is a difference. So this is a really, really nice way as you're migrating your paths over to make sure that nothing is actually going to fail when you run your application in production. What if we want to just go ahead and auto update all of our routes all at once? It is an algorithm after all. It should just be a one-to-one mapping and should make sense. There's a few scripts that exist to do this, and I really like this one by Plopix, and it's just a little simple curl command, and that will run this bash script that he's created and put up on GitHub. So we can go ahead and try and run this and see what happens. If you don't pass any arguments, it'll automatically create a few routes for you. And now if we open up the app, we can see there's these routes v2 and all of the flat routes that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this old routes, and I'm going to change this to just routes. And let's go ahead and run remix routes. So we can see that some paths failed, specifically the docs. So this is not going to work for my migration. I can't just do a raw transfer of one format to the other. I'm going to need to be a little bit more careful. So how can I walk through the specific routes that I want to change, maybe the specific directories one at a time that I want to change, and check that they work correctly? So first I'm going to reset everything. I want everything back to where it was. And the next thing we're going to do is look at this little bash file. So there's a lot going on here. Basically what this does is it runs our remix routes, and then it creates a temp directory, runs that script that we had, and then it moves over a specific folder that I want it to move over, reruns the diff and the routes, and then lets me know what happened. So let's see how this works. If I run /migrate to v2 routing.bash, and I'm going to do this /image because that is a directory that we have inside of our app routes. We have this little image, and it's very simple. It just does the social image. So we'll run that, and it's going to run through these various scripts that I have. And at the very end, it will say there was a slight diff, but we can see that it's just the ID has changed from route/image/social to route/image.social, which is perfectly fine. And the file is updated, which is actually exactly what we want. So now we can see that that one worked correctly. If we run npm run dev, we can make sure that our server is still running correctly. And here we can refresh this. And if we go into a specific blog post, inspect it, what we want to see is I can look up Twitter and try and find the image, because this is actually what is being generated. So if we go to this URL, this should work correctly. And that's how we know that our migration for this specific directory worked well. So this is an overall strategy that you can use to try and migrate your routes from the v1 convention to the v2 convention. Again, you can use this v1 route convention library to maintain the old order of how you had your route set up. And as you're moving over, you can try and just use a migration script like this to move everything all at once, and use npx remix routes to check that everything worked. But if it's not going to be that simple, you can go directory by directory with the script that I created. I hope this helps a lot.